Hi, everyone. This is Charles Hoskinson broadcasting live from warm, sunny Colorado. Always warm, always sunny, sometimes Colorado. And tonight, I got the poncho because it's the good, the bad, the ugly night, right? And I figured it's a wonderful time to do an AMA. Saturday night, and the mood is right. Oh, what a night. January 16th, 2021. It's going to be a real fun year. Lots of good things are going to happen. We're going to brush off the crap of the last year. We just got to spend a little bit more time, get out of it. But you know what? A lot of work to do, a lot of fun to have. And I love all of you. You guys are amazing. You've been here since the beginning and then some. And you've seen the ups, you've seen the downs. And there are good days and bad days. And it doesn't matter, no matter what, we show up, nor rain nor snow. So first and foremost, I'd like to thank everybody for just being here. It means the world to me, and it's what gives us the inspiration and resolve that we need to keep pushing forward and keep getting things done. We have the Merry Hard Fork coming next month, another HFC event. Just like all of our Hard Fork Combinator events, it's going to go probably uneventful. We have lots of work happening underneath the hood, tons of work on Adrestia. I'm pushing hard for hybrid wallets, pushing hard for partial delegation. Hybrid wallets are wallets that allow you to connect cold wallets and paper wallets to Daedalus. Daedalus manages voting and staking. The paper wallet and the hardware wallet manages the value keys. So best of both worlds, ease and convenience of a hot wallet, the security of a cold wallet. Partial delegation is delegation to multiple pools with a single wallet. Both these are high priorities. We're working hard on it. A lot of stuff has to be done to enable that. It was something I wanted to have with Shelly, but we had to pull it, and we were bring it back. It just takes sometimes a little bit more time. DevNet's out. Just got my first DevNet report. We're going to start doing weekly or bi-weekly videos to talk about what's going on in the DevNet. Fund 3 is out. Fund 2, 12 entities got funded, 11 plus a mystery one. I think it was Spakra or some stake pool guild. And good things happening there. And Fund 3 is much larger, and it's going to be a lot more fun, a lot more to do. Tons of meetings about that. Goguen is looking solid. Native multi-asset comes with Mary. We've already been with the Mint network, allowing people to issue their own assets. I think over 100 have been issued on that network as a test. And boy, that's great. But bring that to the main net is going to just be phenomenal. And of course, Daedalus will catch up in time. And we'll have that identity center and that voting center. And we'll have the native multi-asset center and these things. Plutus testnet is also coming soon as well, which is the last of the DevNets. There was the EVM DevNet, the Yella DevNet, and then finally the Plutus DevNet. And all three of them constitute the different development experiences that you can have with Cardano. We call it the ocean, the pond, and the island. So look for that. And we're going to actually bring in some firms to do nothing but write Plutus contracts 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we're not going to tell them how to write anything. We're not going to teach them anything about the language. We're going to just say, here's the documentation. Good luck, everybody. And see what they can come up with. The point is to be a red team, to basically expose problems with the tooling, the documentation, the learnability of things, and the clarity of things. So this is kind of like a security audit towards the end. So it's a dev audit, and it'll build lots of cool little smart contracts and patterns. We've also entered discussions with runtime verification about taking K and over an arc of time, 6 months to a year, making K one of the best languages in the world for smart contract specifications. Then you can use that as an executable spec that you can then test and prove properties of Plutus smart contracts, Ethereum smart contracts, Yella smart contracts, and anything else in the K ecosystem. So it'll be a universal specification language in addition to a universal metaprogramming language. So that's going to be a fun thing, and we'll have a meeting next week about it. We just talked about it last week, and huge scope of work. In fact, what's going to happen is RV is going to pull K out of runtime verification and create a K foundation. So because K is an independent open source project, it just happens to have been incubated in academia, And since it's going to become such a prominent part of our ecosystem for specification, like we did with Haskell and working with Simon Peyton-Jones and the rest of the old school Haskell guys, we pulled Haskell out, we're pulling K out, and there's going to be this great foundation for it. So that's real exciting, and look for that in the future. Take some time to get that off the ground, but we're working fast on it. And of course, Mantis work is looking great. Lunatech has really hit the ground running. We've built a great team there, and they're rapidly productizing and getting Mantis to a real nice state. So it can actually run the entire Ethereum Classic network if desired, and of course, bring the plans that we've outlined, the treasury system and so forth. Still doing a lot of great zero knowledge proof work. We have good progress with Sonic. It's now in the optimization phase. Sonics is much faster and better than the snarks that come from Zero Cash land and Zcash land. And we can't wait to blend that with products like Prism. So we can take identity management to the next level and have identity with zero knowledge cryptography. So you can prove all kinds of cool things about an identity without revealing personally identifiable information. So that'll organically work its way into Prism. Prism itself, over time, is being slowly but surely integrated into Cardano. So there's travel rule compliance and FATF compliance, and we make the Treasury Department happy. And it's just something that you as a business owner or person dealing with regulated products have an additional tool in your bag to comply where and when that makes sense. We also met with the Lexion guys. They're actually trying to take real human contracts and transcribe them into computational law. Wonderful, beautiful project. Founder of the project used to work at IBM, and he's written a book. All these guys always have a book, so yet another thing for me to read. But we'll get around to it. So we'll see what we can do there. So a lot of pots in the fire, and that's just a small sampling of them. There's lots of other things you guys don't even know about, and I'm not going to talk about. But fuck it, I'm wearing a poncho. So let's get to your questions, huh? From the Sneak Brigade, how's the Lion's Mane factory coming along? Stamets would be proud. Right now, I'm actually looking at shipping crates, converting shipping crates into environment, temperature, and clean room and style places to grow and incubate mushrooms. Probably throughout the summer and spring is when that facility will be built. It'll take a huge amount of time to build the first module, but once the module is designed, then it's scalable. So you can just keep putting more and more and more together, and then each time you do it, the yield scales linearly. So and you'll get economy of scale, so perhaps even super linearly. So it'll be fun. Sir, when are we implementing Goguen? Approximate dates, please. February is the first, the second of the 3 HFC events. Then shortly thereafter, the Plutus DevNet is going to be running. We're going to beat the hell out of it. And there's a lot of stuff that we have to benchmark and test. And then we also have to make sure all of our partners, the exchange partners, other people are happy because it's such a significant upgrade. It's actually the same in terms of significance to the network that Shelley was. Shelley's perhaps a little larger because you're going from one consensus mechanism to another and you're putting the upgrade system in. But remember, Goguen is physically changing the way every transaction in the entire system works because you're going to the extended UTXO model and you have accompanying Plutus scripts. So there's a lot of infrastructure that has to be carefully tested. So the next HFC event will take place in Q2, but it's hard to say if it's early Q2 or later in Q2, and that's going to be dependent not just on us, but actually on the infrastructure as well. But getting the multi-asset in gets most of the foundations, the remaining foundations in, and then it's just making sure we put this in. The attack surface with Cardano goes up massively because you go from a collection of predefined scripts to anything anybody can program. Okay, so it's super important that everything we think is true as we turn on that capability. So our last chance to make sure that that's okay is during that Plutus DevNet. So we are going to be beating the hell out of it. And there are so many scenarios we're running and so forth. So there you go. Is the treasury staked? If so, who's responsible for staking it? No, it's unstaked because it's sitting in the treasury pool. No one holds treasury funds. The and a special account controlled by the blockchain itself. Along with Gogan, any partnership announcements with governments in Africa? That is for the Africa special, sir. From Josh McFarland. Charles, I want to get involved in blockchain tech. Where do I begin? What training would someone need to contribute to this movement? Well, I don't know your background, but the very first thing you can do is go to Coursera, and there's a class from Princeton University on blockchain that's taught by Ed Felton and a litany of other people. And there's a free companion textbook with it, and it talks about Bitcoin and its history, and that's a good starting point. I'd say it's probably the best gateway drug to enter the space. Then go ahead and read 3 books. Read Digital Gold from Nathaniel Popper to give you a historical context of where the space came from. Go read Dan Tapscott's book on blockchains, and then go read Mastering Bitcoin from Andreas Antonopoulos. Okay, so those 3 things will give you a real good sense of where we came from. Then go do a bunch of Ethereum smart contract programming tutorials. There's Udemy courses that are a few bucks that you can write smart contracts with and play around with that. And of course, go then start building code on our DevNets and eventually our Plutus DevNet. Now for Cardano, if you want to be a Plutus developer, you'll have to also get some Haskell competency. The Haskell book, it's like 40 bucks. That's all you need. That's a beautiful starting point. Once you know that, you'll have the skills you need to be able to write Plutus smart contracts. Which quarter are you looking to have any KVM rolled out by? The KVM is already running on the DevNet. The question is, when will that become a proper sidechain and linked with Cardano? We have to write a SIP because we want to incentivize the running of the sidechains with inflation. So it'll cause a slight monetary policy on the emission side alteration. But my goal would be to have that done in Q2. It might slip a little bit beyond Q2 depending upon how much work is required for the Plutus integration. Likely what will occur is that there'll be, after not the Mary, but the following HFC event, one last HFC event for the Cardano 2020 contract. And that is just the roll-up. So anything that didn't get done with the third HFC event will be cleaned up. Some things like Ouroboros Genesis, for example, will likely be pushed there because it's going to take a little time to test that. And if we, for example, somehow don't get those DevNets wired in because there's a delay, then we'll do it in the next HFC event. And then that's it. That's everything for 2020. And, then it's 2025 we're talking about. And that's a whole different ballgame because there's going to be a massive broadening, an expansion of scope and desire and all this cool alien tech that's sitting on the sidelines. We'd like to pull into Cardano and make Cardano awesome. What's really cool is we kind of already know the future and we know where we can go, and everybody's trying to catch up with things that we have. And because we took the time to build this beautiful foundation, it's very easy for us to keep adding layers and layers and layers. Like Hydra is going to be super easy to roll in when Hydra is available. Might take a while to get Hydra available, but when it's ready, it's not a dramatic event. Going from F1 to F2 is a dramatic event, and any further upgrades to Ethereum in F2 land will be dramatic events. So we move in the opposite direction. They actually get easier in certain respects. Call this the DCF. When can we vote to approve the IOG contract extension? And it won't just be for us. It's going to be us plus a large federation of actors. And we're putting all that together. And our hope is the second half of 2021 that could be proposed with ample time for discussion and debate and a sensible voting process. This is also tightly connected to Catalyst's evolution. So it's important that we get to a reasonable level of participation in voting, or else the contract extension would be a vanity vote. It's not consent of the governed if only 10% participate. I'd like to see a much higher participation threshold and for that to be very meaningful. So we're all working together on that. You guys are actually working on it as much as us because you're participating in Catalyst, and the participation is getting more meaningful, and we're turning on voting tools as quickly as we can. So there's a federation construction, there's a governance construction. It's like building a government. It's like going from the Articles of Confederacy to the Constitution. It's a big changeover, and there's a broadening of all the actors involved. And there's some permanent funding that'll be attached to very specific things that we rely upon as an ecosystem. And then there's, of course, a visionary roadmap of how do we get to 1 billion users? How do we get Cardano to the next level? And so it's not fair to just say, hey, here's this date. No, you have to get all those things ready. When it's ready, there we go. In the meantime, well, we're going to keep working on the 2020 stuff and clear out that entire queue. And we will continue working on Cardano in a support role and a development role until the conclusion of the DCF, one way or the other, so that there will be either a renewal with clarity or a gradual scale back. And it doesn't create a massive disruption because the system will be completely decentralized in every dimension at that point and self-sustaining. Any news you can share from the Cardano Foundation side? I think Fred is doing a great job on his side, alerting people and giving them news about stuff. And it's going to be fun to see what they come up with this year. Got a lot of capital. They got a lot of dry powder. It's about time to strike the anvil and get things out. We got to move quickly. Timeline for when we can vote on Daedalus. I've gotten one. I didn't like it, so I yelled at some people, and we'll see if that yelling is productive. As soon as we can. We're working hard on it. Just there are so many other things like native multi-asset, hybrid wallets, partial wallets, deploying and interacting with Plutus applications and these things that also have to be done in parallel. So the voting center is a high priority ticket, and we are working as quickly as we can to service that in addition to other high priority tickets. And it's also the same for Yoroi. They have a lot to do, but they're also building a voting center at some point, which will go into their framework in addition to the cell phone application and the command line tools. Your background is awesome. This is a real background. This is actual stuff behind me that I've collected throughout the years. Any super announcements this week? Depends on other people. Any more news on AGI and social media? I did a social media video called Blue Skies and Social Media. Watch that. As for AGI, I'm going to do an interview, joint interview with Ben Goritzel soon, probably next week or the week after, and we're good to go. I get this question a lot. Will Gogan be fully implemented after the HFC in March? No. At first, it's the HFC in February. And as I've said all along, there were 3 HFC events to get all of the entire Plutus and native multi-asset stack dragged into the core protocol. So that first took place with Allegra in December, Mary in February, and then sometime during Q2, the final hard fork, which we have yet to name. And whether that's early or late is dependent upon what happens with the Plutus DevNet and what we learn when we start rapidly stress testing things, because there's going to be so much we throw at that to verify that that infrastructure is looking right. Then there's a whole constellation of surrounding infrastructure like tooling, QA tools, standard libraries, app stores, these types of things. And that'll bleed into post third hard fork. And so that's what that final HFC event is, to kind of clean some things up if there's anything that even needs it. We know that Genesis will require that. So that'll get scoped out there. So no, And we've repeatedly said the same thing over and over and over again. It's a collection of things you have to do. If you do them all at once, it's not a good idea. You have to do them and test them. Right around the time of the February HFC event, we're also going to turn on the peer-to-peer capabilities as well. So that'll likely occur in March. No guarantee. Could be a little earlier, could be a little later, but it'll probably happen after the HFC event. Big deal. And we've been waiting for that. We've been running simulations. We've redone things a dozen times because we wanted to get it perfect. And now we're ready for it. But that's another pivotal piece of decentralization in the ecosystem. Post-Mary upgrade. Can we store AGI on Daedalus? AGI hasn't been ported over to Cardano yet. I just signed a decision memo to begin that process. AGI carries some logic with it. So likely what will happen is we'll probably move the AGI logic over to the EVM DevNet as a starting point and make sure we fully understand it and exactly what we want. And when the Plutus DevNet is running, then we can write the Plutus code in tandem with the native multi-asset. What's coming with Mary will allow you to issue a token, but if you want spending policy and advanced token logic, like what you would see with MakerDAO or something of that order of magnitude, you'll need Plutus scripts. So you need a little bit more to do that. So it just depends if you're issuing an accounting token like an ERC20. This is measuring ownership. So loyalty points, stock, these types of things, that would be sufficient there. But if you want complex token logic, then you need a little bit more. So a port from like to like, from Ethereum to a DevNet would make a lot of sense because we could be intimately familiar with that. And then one more port from the DevNet to native Plutus would make sense. And we can begin that with the Plutus DevNet. So anyway, Ben's an expert. He got his PhD in math at 21, and he's surrounded by brilliant people. So eminently more qualified people than me are having these discussions. And I just signed the checks at this point. Cardano phone, please. Someone came to me yesterday about that. Who knows? Maybe we'll figure it out. This is an interesting question. How do you overcome pitfall? And I'm sorry, I don't know your name. I can't pronounce that. How do you overcome pitfalls such as CP and terrorism on decentralized social network? Even though I want to see power of speech taken away from large companies, I see where the weaknesses are. It's important to understand that first, the majority of terrorist attacks, sectarian violence, white supremacy, black supremacy, all of these things that float around have been planned on traditional social media and channels, Facebook, Twitter, MySpace, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, et cetera, okay? So decentralized social media really has not, in any sense of the word, whether it be Mastodon, Gab, Minds, and so forth, had any contribution to terrorist attacks, terrorist financing, or terrorist organization. Okay, so that's one thing to say. Now, why? Because obviously they're small, and the other tools were sufficient. Now, I did a whole video discussing how to build, at least conceptually, a decentralized social network. And I said, well, you kind of have to do it in two different discrete steps. And you have to be very smart about these things. The first is the onboarding must onboard people into a culture and an environment that tends to promote information flows and de-radicalization over siloing and radicalization. If you are unable to do that, abort, don't launch, because all you're doing is just making a siloed radical network more resilient, okay? The second part is the information architecture side of how people communicate with each other, the incentives they have to communicate with each other, and do the algorithms and incentives and information architecture align in the right way to enable people to communicate in objective, and when they're being subjective, be able to label that ways, and they're held accountable for crazy thoughts. And there's a decentralized moderation that occurs there in all things. Now, I made 2 videos on this. I did a whiteboard video explaining that, and I also did a video talking a little bit about the radicalization component with Blue Skies and social media. So I'd highly recommend you watch those 2 videos. They're combined about 2 hours long. So it would derail the entire AMA to revisit that territory. And that's just a starting point. And it turns out that plus a third item, a governance layer, the same type of voting tools we're building for Catalyst, those 3 things together would deliver a much more useful, meaningful, and safer experience for billions of people. And you would never have to deplatform. You'd never have to shut people out. You'd never have to ban people. Okay? So a lot to think about, a lot to do, but I honestly think that these last generation social networks, they're coasting on monopolies and they're very fragile. And like MySpace was very fragile, I think they could shatter in 24 months to 36 months with the proper competitive model. So we will certainly be players in that. Unlikely going to be players in that this year because there's just simply too much to do. But certainly going to have something much more significant to say with product in 2022. And of course, we're talking to the Minds people and talking to a litany of other social networks and getting an understanding where they sit and so forth. Do you think Gary Gensler will be good for the overall crypto industry? The thing I like about the appointment of Gensler is that he is competent. He's clearly a very smart guy, and he fully understands our industry to the extent that he taught at MIT on our industry. So he at least we can have a conversation with him. FinHub also now directly reports to the chairman, and the way that the SEC is currently structured, I honestly believe that it is probably in a productive, positive dialogue with our industry. And there's no indication at the moment that there's going to be a very anti-crypto SEC. That said, a lot of difficult questions to resolve, and also the SEC doesn't have a perfect set of enforcement powers. In many cases, they still have too large of a hammer. For example, if securities laws were slightly different, there could have been a reality where they could have punished Chris and Brad at XRP without trying to say XRP is a security. And had they had that power, I think perhaps they would have chosen it because it would have been not only easier for them, but also not harmed investors overall. So I think Gary's a smart guy, and he's going to be more than capable of working with his administration to find a healthy compromise for the industry. Now, compromise means we don't always get what we want, and we may disagree with things, but at least we don't feel like we've been shafted. And that, for example, what Mnuchin has done with the Treasury Department. Charles, can we compete with and beat Polkadot? I'm not even worried about Polkadot at all. It's a red herring. Interesting sweater. Sir, this is a poncho. How to Beat Addictions. Cognitive Behavioral Therapy. Best in the book. What's the update with Litecoin collab? We got to write a lip. That's on us. And one of these days we'll write one. The guy I was going to have write it was Dionysus Zindros, and he decided to go take some time off and play the piano and love life. So we have to find somebody else to write the lib. Dionysus invented the primitive. He's the most qualified person in the world to write it. And we're busy, and we'd like to do it. It's just you have to pull engineers and do it. And my kind of the team that I like pulling for these things is right now working on ETC. So they were the pull team, and I already pulled them. So I have to build another team for it. So we'll get around to it. It just takes some time. Will you be visiting Okinawa? I would love to meet you. Yes, when I come to Japan. I'm waiting for the pandemic to die down a little bit and waiting for the vaccine rate to go up a little bit. And when those two things occur, then people can actually be in person and talk to each other like human beings again. So I think that's going to happen the second half of this year. There's a huge surge of vaccinations that are coming, vaccine platforms that are coming online. The Johnson & Johnson platform looks like it's safe and efficacious, and it's going to come online in February in the United States. And I do believe they have distribution in Japan, as does AstraZeneca, as does Pfizer and Moderna. So given that those will be 4 platforms, US were, for some bizarro world reason, waiting until April for the AstraZeneca vaccine. At the very least in the US side, we'll have broad-scale vaccination in the general public, probably in the April to May timeframe. Whether you're pro-vaccine, anti-vaccine, this is relevant because it's relevant to whether people stop wearing masks, large gatherings occur again, restaurants can be at full capacity, and we can travel unrestricted. Okay, that's the mechanism that the commons of the world, all the people in charge of the world, have universally decided is going to happen. Herd immunity at about 70% to 80%. Now, there are variants of coronavirus that are floating around, 2 in particular, the UK variant and the South Africa variant. I've heard conflicting things on the South Africa variant about whether it has escaped the vaccines, but it's very clear that the UK variant, which is more infectious, it appears to be more infectious, it is still affected by the vaccine at the same rate that the prior variants were. So another 4 months, 5 months of heavy vaccination, new platforms coming online, and I think that we'll see a rapid scale down of the overall infectiousness and lethality of coronavirus. And at that point, people will get back to normal life. Now, governments are skeptical pandas, doctors, unless you can guarantee no one will ever die ever, of course, they're going to say crazy things. So, there's going to be some latency from that. So probably it'll be towards the end of this year before the world starts appearing to be normal again, and we have a handle on it. But in terms of we have to worry in any sense, especially for certain groups, I think by June that worry will be gone, because once people get vaccinated, it goes from a pandemic to an endemic disease, and the natural immunity we have from that, or vaccine granted immunity, will be strong enough that if you get it, it's not going to be a problem for you. It's an interesting question here. Sir, how do you feel about gambling 1v1 video games on the blockchain? I have some. So one of the things you have to do, and there was a great paper written by Han Chang over at Virginia Commonwealth University called Proof of Human. And basically, it's not good enough just to have a decentralized service for people to find each other and play each other, but you need to know that your counterparty that you're playing against is a human being. So what you do to accommodate that is that you run the game, and then you introduce a stochastic step that every now and then the game will give you a human puzzle to solve, and you have to solve it within a certain time frame. And if you don't, then you lose all your winnings because you're a bot. And so it would be cool to put a proof of human combined with the game to verify you're not playing against a bot counterparty. Because OpenAI and this all this other stuff, it's gotten to a point where for most games that people play, a computer can play it better. And there's just no sport if you know that you're playing against a fake person. Combine that with DIDs and also bonds, where if someone has been found out to be a bot, they lose their bond. I'm sure we create something like that in principle. It's going to be really fun to see what the gaming industry does for it. Have you ever read Creativity Inc.? Yes, it's a good book about John Lasseter and Ed Catmull and how Pixar became one of the most famous and effective and profitable digital animation studios in the world. They also taught Steve Jobs how to be Steve Jobs. So I think they've had a bigger influence than people let on. Have you ever been to the Amazon? If not, do you intend on going someday? Yes, I have been. And there's actually a ritual I'd like to go through. There's a rite of passage that they have with a certain tribe in the Amazon where they weave bullet ants into gloves, and you put your hands inside of the gloves. And if you can survive, then you've become a man. Well, I'm a big fan of hypnosis, and there's actually something called glove anesthesia, where you can actually use auto hypnosis to remove sensation temporarily in a limb or your body. And it's actually been used for surgeries. Incredible thing. It was very popular in the 19th century. After the use of anesthesia, it fell out of popularity, but it's still done occasionally. So I've always wanted to see, can you use glove anesthesia through hypnosis to be able to go through that ritual with no problem, and making me the manliest of the manly men in the tribe, because I'll feel no pain. So that'll be something I do in my 40s, not in my 30s. I'm a crazy man who's well-read. Have you read Man's Search for Meaning? Yes, that was Viktor Frankl's book, one of the great books in the foundation of logotherapy, the last of the Austrian schools of psychotherapy. Will to Meaning. Are people who believe in aliens nut jobs? I don't think so. I don't think so at all. I think there's mounting evidence that there perhaps could be alien life floating around. And it makes sense from a statistical viewpoint. That's not cheating. That's not cheating. Okay. The reason being is that in life, there's a front door and a back door. Okay. And if you're really, really, really clever, the highest art is to find the secret back door for all things. Capitalism. You can work really, really, really hard. You can follow a traditional business model, do everything right. And when you get to your 50s and 60s, you get to a point where if you did everything right, you follow that model and you fought and fought and fought, worked 80-hour weeks and try to avoid divorce, you get to the other side and you retire incredibly well. That's what my grandfather did on my mom's side. And there are back doors where if you start a new industry, like what Bill Gates did or Steve Jobs did or what Bezos did with Amazon and so forth, you basically wake up in your 30s a billionaire. Is that cheating? No, because you decided not to play the game. You decided to reinvent the game and play a different game that other people who come after you now can play. And that's, I'd say, the highest art in capitalism, the highest art in life is to find those secret paths that people haven't seen before, because you give those paths to everyone else. All those who come after you now can go and play that and find their own paths and so forth. And that's what makes progress in society. Have you ever read much of Nietzsche? Yeah, he's got the Antichrist, the Übermensch. Thus Spoke Zarathustra. There's a good symphony for that. What do you believe is the best university degree you could study? If I could go and do it all over again, I love mathematics and it was great. And, sure, I should have completed a PhD in it. I didn't. What I would have gone into computer science and minored in the arts and music and art, and then kept that all the way through and completed a PhD in computer science. The reason being is that comp sci gets sufficiently close to math that if you care, you can make your comp sci experience math enough to do all the kinds of math that I was interested in. You still learn problem solving skills and thinking skills. And then if you're deeply connected to the arts and music, you become a holistic person and you have a conversation with anybody. And you're prepared with data literacy. You're able to interface in data science. You can talk to the controllers of the future, computers, in ways that most people can't. So I think, honestly, it's probably the best of the degrees that exist, and it's the best of the worst in that none of the degree structures are really meaningful or significant. You have to separate the acquisition of knowledge and maturity from vocational skills. And unfortunately, they're terribly conflated at the undergraduate level, and people don't get what they pay for. Thoughts on the Anunnaki? So these are Mesopotamian gods who people believe perhaps were aliens. And there's a whole bunch of conspiracy theories or creative fan fiction that exists on the internet about them. I do collect Babylonian artifacts and Sumerian artifacts. In fact, I have one floating around somewhere. Right over here. For example, this is a Babylonian tablet. So a cuneiform tablet. Go a little closer. Okay, so I'm quite familiar with the history and all the cool things that happened there and the death of their empires during the Bronze Age to the Sea People and so forth. There's a lot of cool things there. And actually, Norman Wildberger, if you're ever interested in how they're mathematics, a base 60 system. We have a base 10 system. And you do mathematics differently. You actually had to use special computing tables to be able to do arithmetic. And I happen to have one right here. I'll show you guys. Here we go. So that's actually something like what you would see. An equivalent would be like a log table or something like that. A log book that we used to have before calculators became commonplace. And there's a rich culture there. Anyway, I think it's a bunch of bollocks. But some people like it and they believe in it. So how about that? Do you play any instruments? The piano, and not so well. You used to a lot better, but you know, life gets in the way. And I am learning the shakuhachi flute one of these days. Advice for heartbreaks. Well, give me more details, Swiss for change. Hello, caller. I'm listening. From Justin Fujimoto, an often joiner of our AMAs. Yes, I do use Signal in addition to WhatsApp and all these other things. Why can't you still go for the PhD? Of course I can, and I will, but it takes a lot of time. One of the things you do while pursuing such a degree of that nature is you go very, very deep. So you need to be able to sit down uninterrupted for 12 hours, 16 hours every day for years and think very, very deep and then come up with original contributions. And if I was doing that, I would not be building Cardano. The Pink Floyd poster, in every deal, one party always gets burned. That's the Wish You Were Here album cover. It's my favorite album from Pink Floyd. Do you have any interest in rejuvenation biotechnology? Yes, sir, I do. I am getting myself a hyperbaric chamber, and I'm going to go ahead and go through a experimental exosome treatment here in a little bit. That's just the beginning of regenerative biology. One of these days, I'm going to establish a regenerative medicine company and just make sure that we do that. I think we're right at the beginning of one of the most meaningful series of advancements in the history of medicine. This pandemic is also, because of the mRNA advancements, going to fundamentally change cancer therapy. Within the next 20 years, because of what Moderna has done and Pfizer has done, what we've learned from this experience, it is entirely possible that when you get cancer, they can do a bunch of magic gene stuff. Think about it. Plug a bunch of data into a computer, a supercomputer, and the supercomputer will crank out a bunch of numbers and create a cancer vaccine for you. They inject you with it, just like they're injecting you with these Moderna vaccines, and then suddenly your immune system can recognize all the cancerous tumors in your body and kill them for you. That's probably going to come in the next 20 years. A lot of people are talking about it, and that science is almost where it needs to be. In fact, in laboratories, they're taking rats and giving them human immune systems, giving them cancer and doing just that and showing that they can clear it out. So really cool to see that where that goes. For those of you who don't know, there's actually a lovely article from New York Magazine that talks about this. The Moderna vaccine for coronavirus was designed in 2 days. So once we got the Chinese genetic sequence, in 2 days, January of last year, we designed the vaccine, and that vaccine has remained unchanged since it was injected into human beings. So you can do these things really quickly, and you can do them at the scale of the hospital. In fact, there's an mRNA company called CureVac, which is talking about modular vaccine manufacturing capabilities that live at the hospital unit. So you go in, you get some genetic testing, some stuff happens, they use cloud computing to figure out what to do, and then they make you a vaccine just for you right there for a specific ailment anytime. Pretty cool future. That's coming the next 20 years. Who is we? You designed some vaccine. We as in the human race. The Moderna company did that. Sometimes I use the royal we, collective we, of all people, you included. What is your succession plan, and what happens to Cardano if something happens to you? Who is your number 2? So if I die, Cardano's fine. It doesn't require me. If IOG goes out of business, Cardano's okay. I mean, just like Coinbase going out of business or Tether blowing up, it has some form of an impact on Bitcoin that would have some impact on Cardano, but Cardano will continue on undisrupted. We're at that point of decentralization. Is there a succession plan within the company? There are 3 duties of a CEO. And only 3 duties. Everything else is extra. It's brownie points. But you do these 3 things, you're a good CEO. 1 is sustainable profit for the enterprise. You come up with a strategy that, if executed, you make more than you spend, and that's sustainable. So it doesn't go away. It's there. Number 2, you deal with existential threats. So the movie Margin Call is a great example of that, where they discover that the markets are about to blow up, and they keep escalating and escalating until they get to Jeremy Irons, and then the CEO is sitting there, flies in on the helicopter, and he says, okay, it's my job to know when the symphony stops playing. Okay, so existential threats, things that happen that if you don't deal with them the right way, the company dies, or you massively get damaged and derailed. For example, Microsoft realized that Windows is no longer going to be the cash cow they thought it was going to be, and they needed to pivot to a completely new business model. And if they didn't solve that in a 24 to 36 month period, they would be in a position where they would be shut out of all these other markets. And it was very clear that that was happening. It was an existential threat. And then finally, succession. It's the final and the thing that every CEO fucks up on. Walt Disney fucked up on it. Steve Jobs, in my view, didn't do a phenomenal job with that. Bill Gates clearly failed with that with Steve Ballmer. And that's something I focus a lot on. So how do you accommodate that is you create a collection of very strong executives, senior executives in the organization who have the complementary and in some cases parallel skills to you. And so if you disappear, if you die, those people can take on the role and still do novel, original, creative and things and carry on the organization. And you institutionalize your philosophy and your views so that the organization protects them and carries them through. So I'm not worried. I think we're fine. And I'm only 33. So, in lieu of an accident, I'll be around for a long time. Who's the greatest computer scientist of all time? Had he lived longer, probably Johnny von Neumann would have been the greatest because he was just a polymath of the nth degree. But it's hard to say because the field has certainly grown and grown and grown, and we witnessed it from its birth, and now you see this huge flow of things. So for example, like Claude Shannon created information theory, and he kind of created that entire field. So that's a big deal, right? But then you have foundational pioneers like Donald Knuth in algorithms, for example. You have Backus, and Goguen and these other guys, and each and every one of them were titans in their fields, and they created these foundations. We all cite that work, but how do you quantify one is greater than the other? It's the same with mathematicians. Like, who's greater, Archimedes, Gauss, or Euler? Well, they're all great in their own respect. So I think you're asking for, for a slightly different question. You should say, in your view, whose contributions have led to the society we have? And there you perhaps can make better headway, because there are certain computer scientists that just had the right idea, they got it done, and it led to the creation of the modern internet, the creation of modern programming, modern artificial intelligence, and et cetera, et cetera. And of course, you're always biased. You're biased to the problems you're trying to solve. You are a science guy. How do you explain World Trade Center 7? It collapsed. Stuff hit it and it collapsed. I don't know. 20 years ago, What are your view on the Baha'i faith? The same views I have with Christianity, Islam, or Judaism, or any of these other faiths. I think it's useful for certain practitioners, and it gives them foundations and guidance that they need to deal with questions like death or loss or tragedy and other things. Religion is social programming that we as humans come up with to help us, guide us through life and give life some semblance of meaning and allow us to deal with that which cannot be dealt with. And when you look at it from that way, then all you really have to ask is efficacy. When you get this mind virus, is it actually helping or hindering you? Is it making your life happier and better and making you more balanced? Or is it isolating you and hurting you? Certain faiths are very rigid and very draconian, and they do isolate you. Other faiths are very open, and they don't. And so Baha'i is just an example of that. And they, like all the other faiths of the world, have had their ups and downs and endured persecution. Like their holy man was Babala or something like that, probably butchering the pronunciation. Charles, is your Instagram real or a scam? Catfish page. I do not have an Instagram. So if you see an Instagram of me, it is fake. So it is a scam. Do you believe that Zoroastrianism came before Judaism? Well, they're probably contemporaries, but sure, some religions are durable. Do we need Twitter or does Twitter need us? Are you a butterfly dreaming of being man or a man dreaming of being a butterfly? There's some wisdom for you. Where did you buy that poncho? Amazon. Like all things in life, they must come from Amazon. However, this hat came with my tractor. Yeah. Got a Massey Ferguson tractor. Came with the hat. I wear it when I drive. Hair gets all messed up. Best trail in Colorado for a 3 to 4 night backpacking trip. Head up to Telluride in Array. There's tons of trails in that area. Idyllic mountains, absolutely stunning area, and some good restaurants as well. Hey, Charles Hoskinson, do you like coding? Yes, when the problems are worth coding. Is Tesla overvalued? Yes. Hydra whiteboard video coming this year. Some part of Hydra will come this year. We're moving, and I'm going to accelerate and put my foot on the accelerator for it. We've been working hard on it, but we have the head protocol, the head tail protocol, the tail protocol, and the routing protocol. There are 4 papers that need to be done, plus prototypes. We will get that done one way or another. I'm very vicious about that. Do I drive a Lamborghini? Yes, I do. It's one of my many cars. I have a Lamborghini Huracan 2017 LP 610 Spider. And it was courtesy of some consulting work. Threw it in for sweetening the deal. It's crazy people pay me for consulting. I never thought I'd be a consultant. Doing pretty good if you get a free Lambo with it. Is a central clock a point of failure? We do not have a central clock. You're referring to Cheapco Crypto's stupid propaganda. There is no point of failure. It's not an issue at all. It's never been an issue. If it was ever going to be an issue, we have a paper that solves that issue. And one of these days we'll implement it, not because we think it's an issue, but we think it would be nice to compete with NTP. Do not listen to YouTubers who pretend to be cryptographers. Mark. If it was an issue and NTP was an issue, the entire internet would have problems. Your computers would have problems. Your SSL certificates would have problems. Everything would have problems. What do you think of Hedera Hashgraph? I would take them seriously and then read their white papers and read their code if they weren't laden with patents. I have a policy. If you patent your work and there is an owner of your code, I will pretend like you don't exist. I don't care if you can cure cancer, give me a blowjob, and take 10 years off my age. Don't care. If you're patented, not going to talk to you in terms of code. It's just crazy. So maybe they have something good, maybe they don't. I've never once read a single line of code. I've never read their white paper. I know nothing about the project other than the fact that there is an owner. And you can give all this bullshit about how that's necessary for defensive reasons. It wasn't for Bitcoin. It wasn't for Ethereum. It's not for Polkadot. It's not for Cardano. It's not for any of the other cryptocurrencies, but apparently they know best. Don't use garbage. It was a $60,000 hat. Came with a free tractor, though. Farmer joke. Do you personally know Dr. Jordan Peterson? I have not had the opportunity to meet him, and I know he's been having some health problems, unfortunately. But it seems like he's starting to recover and get a little bit better. But I'd love to meet him, and I'd love to spend some time with him and certainly talk to him. He's a great guy. His work is phenomenal for many people. It gives them meaning, purpose in life. And that is one of the highest pursuits in philosophy. What's your car collection? I have trucks, Cadillacs, and that weirdo European Lamborghini. So I can take all the trucks and all the Cadillacs to the same dealership to get them serviced. The Lamborghini has to be towed to a dealership down in Denver, and it costs crazy amounts of money for an oil change. My Cadillac CT6, it's $35 for an oil change. The Lamborghini, it's like on a good day, $1,100. Bad day, more. So tells you something about a sucker being born every minute. And by the way, it's the worst time to buy a supercar. They're upgrading all of them. Like the Sion line is coming, and the new Ferraris are coming, and McLarens are coming, and they're all going to be battery powered. And what's good about that is they're going to be twice as fast. So we should see 0 to 60s in 1.8 seconds for these things. The Huracan is 0 to 60 in 3. So it's just going to be crazy what they do with these cars. No Tesla. No, I don't like the interiors. And there is a Cadillac that's coming out. It's going to be battery powered and it looks really cool. It's Celeste or something like that. And I'll take a look at that. I'm a Cadillac guy, like American cars, American Cadillacs. And the quality control of Tesla, because they make so many, and they make them so quickly, and there's drifts in the staff, is quite significant. Some people have the best car ever. Other people, it's like big gaps with the door. Your stream quality got much worse. Internet upgrade in the future. I can't do anything. I'm out here on the farm. I'm right now trying to work out a deal with a series of farmers to broadcast fiber optic internet from Longmont to this place with directed long-range Wi-Fi. And like literally, we have to build a 150-foot tower. But Nextlight, not here. Comcast, not here. This is a 4G connection that I'm talking to you guys on. Move to the city, bro. 30 minutes from the airport, 20 minutes outside of Boulder, 35 minutes outside of Denver. I can be at an international airport that has a direct flight to Tokyo, a direct flight to Frankfurt in 30 minutes. And I live on 50 beautiful acres, wonderful mountain view. If I don't want to see my neighbors, I don't see my neighbors. If I want to see my neighbors, I see them. Super quiet, laid back, grow my own hay, have raised bed gardens. You can't do that in the city. It's not possible. And despite the fact that I have all the land, I'm close to everything. So it's like being in the city. You take sacrifices, however, and one of them is bad internet. But we will fix that one day. So get Starlink. Well, when it's available, I'll get it. If Vitalik was a fruit, what kind of fruit would he be? A durian. Charles, how's Yella coming along? Very well, actually. We kicked them in the butt. They have a huge list of shit to do, and they're working hard on it. We keep whipping them, but they're following a long roadmap. Yella will be production ready probably in the June timeframe. Do you think artificial intelligence will replace programmers? Did it replace photographers? No, I think it's going to augment them. Are you Jewish? No. Baptized Catholic, quarter Norwegian, quarter Italian. I am not Jewish, no Jewish blood. A lot of people seem to think I am, though, which is a funny thing. Played chess, studied math, made a lot of money. So they'll take me. Yeah, it's like about 10 years ago, or maybe even longer, on the Dave Chappelle show, they had the racial draft, and each race got to draft people who were mixed race or close to them to see if they're going to fit one bucket or the other. So the blacks drafted Tiger Woods, and the Chinese, they took Wu-Tang Clan. So yeah, I think that the Jewish lobby may draft me one day. There's been offers. If you do a PhD in computer science, what field would you focus on? Well, if I went back, I actually did that, deep computational logic, and I'd be in the intersection of mechanization of mathematics, and actually I'd be really keen to also do something with artificial intelligence there, because I think that once you've mechanized math, you've actually written mathematics in a machine understandable language. And I think the best foundation perhaps could be homotopy type theory. You could then take all the known patterns and all the known proofs for a field like algorithmic number theory and stuff like that. And then you could just apply ML and create a conjecture engine. And that engine would allow you then to propose new interesting problems, or perhaps find solutions to older problems. So I think there's a renaissance in automated theorem proving, and that's what I would do. That's where I would focus. And we're going to do it in my company. We're going to start up the Q Adidas project again, and I'm going to rename it Hilbert in honor of David Hilbert, and the currency will be Noether, after Emmy Noether. It's spelled no ether. But we'll bootstrap that, and whenever I finally retire and have the time, then I go finish off the PhD. What's your favorite comedian? You should probably be saying, who is your favorite comedian? Dave Chappelle. His early work was extraordinary. Outside of Dave Chappelle, there's a few I like. Carlin, and George Carlin was also another one I really enjoyed. Favorite fiction writer and favorite filmmaker. Arthur C. Clarke and Philip K. Dick, great writers, absolutely great writers, and they kind of knew the future. They kind of planned out where the 20th century and 21st century were going to go. Favorite filmmaker alive is Denis Villeneuve, who's doing Dune, and he did one of my favorite current movie, Blade Runner 2049, of all time, Stanley Kubrick. If you could find a way to take Stanley and put him together with Danny and have Danny and Stanley like a Coen Brothers movie, great. But I also love the Coen Brothers as well. And my favorite non-sci-fi movie is The Big Lebowski. That's like my opinion, man. Is 5G dangerous? No. The people pushing rumors that it is are. Did you play any sports? Yes, when I was a kid, I did judo in Hawaii. And that was tough because all the kids in Hawaii are big. They're like those Tongan, Samoan, Polynesian kids. And yeah, try, being on a mat with them. That was fun. Keto it up soon. Do you think Kamala Harris will take over as president? If so, when? I think there's a non-zero possibility. I think there's a greater than 50% chance that sometime during Biden's term, he'll step down and Harris will step in. Probably not this year, but maybe 2022 or 2023. Is your father a mathematician? No, my father's a doctor, and his father was a doctor. Did you stay in touch with Ron Paul? I'd like to see you interview him. He certainly does intersect with our space quite often, and one of these days I'll probably try to drag him on. He's 85 now, and he's having a tough time after the stroke, but I think he's doing good. I think he's doing good. How did you become such a Bave magnet? It's called being a billionaire. It's not hard. I kid. Thoughts on optimistic roll-ups? They're going to be a big deal in 24 months. Big deal. You know, it's an interesting one. Gulfstream 700, the G650 was for its time just incredible. But then you start thinking, like, when you get to that price range, it's not much more to do Boeing business jet. And if you're going to do Boeing business jet, you can put a full-size bedroom with a king-size bed, a shower, and a closet, in addition to all of the other amenities. So, shouldn't you just go for the 737 or the Airbus equivalent if you're not liking Boeing these days? I don't know. Well, then you're a damn good engineer if you're an engineer for the G650. It's a phenomenal private jet. You know, the body is incredible, uh, great avionics, great engines. Everything about that plane is just incredible. I've only flown on one of them, and I have to tell you, it was a great experience. And I like the cabin is pressurized to like a reasonable altitude as well, and moisturized air. It's those little touches to detail that are nice. Would you ever like to be on the Joe Rogan Experience? Rogan after Gogan, son. Rogan after Gogan. Milk or eggs? I have chickens, but not cows. I eat my own eggs. Farm fresh eggs every day. Do you watch any adult cartoons? Archer, South Park, Family Guy? Yes. Talk about Ramanujan. He was actually one of the greatest mathematicians of the 20th century. He had the potential, like Ernesto Galois, for example, had to be one of the greatest mathematicians, or Abel of the 20th century. He just died too young. G.H. Hardy discovered him, brought him to England. He wasn't able to eat a proper diet, and he was taken from a very isolated environment to a completely different culture and much more human contact, that was and different diseases, different circumstances, and it killed him. It would have been much, much, much better had Hardy gone to India and spent time with Ramanujan instead of Ramanujan going to London. That said, the intuition was just remarkable. You just come up with stuff, and you're like, where did this come from? It came to me in a dream. So there's just some people who are like that. Off the charts brilliant. What do you like about Ergo? People who built Ergo, they used to work for me. And I like them. They're good people, and it's a good project. It has a right to exist. Do you enjoy the Lagrange multipliers? I enjoy all of Lagrange's theorems, the ones in number theory, the ones in algebra, and every other one of them. Do you think the psychedelics industry and companies like MindMed will do well long term? Why do you think I'm growing my own mushrooms, guys? You know, it's like learning how to grow hemp. Eventually, they legalize everything, and then you can pivot production. Doing lion's mane and all these other things, very easy to go over to psilocybin. I think within 10 to 20 years, psychedelic mushrooms will be legalized universally across the entire United States. And I would love to participate once that happens in producing them, because they have incredible outcomes for people with depression, PTSD, and when it's used with a therapeutic aim. And I think that it would be a miracle for mankind. Depression is a terrible ailment, and many of you suffer from it. People very close to me have it, and it's just sad because everything in your life could be going just incredibly well. Everybody loves you, you're supported, but then it feels as if nothing is right and there's nothing you can do. And they tell you to take an SSRI or something like that, and it doesn't really help for most people. It just blunts it a bit. And if we have alternative treatments which are more effective or complementary, we have a moral obligation for the tens of millions of people in the United States who suffer from that to pursue them. So I think psilocybin is a great avenue in that respect. And Johns Hopkins agrees. As an example, I need help with depression. I'm in treatment, nothing works. That's the story of millions of people, and we underestimate how devastating this can be. And it's not just, well, suck it up, grow out of it. It's horrific, and it's affected people like President Richard Nixon, for example, and President George H.W. Bush, for example. And at the time when they got it, they weren't even allowed to talk about it for fear of how people would perceive them. So it's a duly bad disease. And when you see someone with a gunshot wound or a broken leg, you see that person's hurt, they're wounded. We should help them. And you don't question the fact that maybe it's a little harder for them to get to the door or get to work or do a job because you know they're injured and you treat them accordingly. But then people have no tolerance or patience for those who are depressed, oftentimes. And they treat them just like it's sadness or a phase or get out of it and get back to work. But in many cases, that can be worse than a gunshot wound or a broken arm. And it's more hopeless because, at least with the broken arm or the gunshot wound, you know it's going to heal. And you have a rough idea of how long that takes from prior experience. With depression, it could last years, and it destroys the relationships around you. Is that a Clint Eastwood cape? It is a Clint Eastwood poncho, one of my favorite movies, actually, series of movies: Fistful of Dollars, Good, Bad, and the Ugly, all the spaghetti westerns. What is your favorite video game? So some of you know I own a video game company, yet to be named. I'm right now just acquiring video game IP. So I bought Legends of Valor, that's the public one, and we'll keep scaling that. I would say that probably the best overall video, every category, meaning you look at the totality of everything, is Arcanum. It was the last of an era of games that started with games like Fallout, and the magic of Arcanum was that it was something entirely new. It was a steampunk world with magic. They were opposing each other. There was deep philosophy. There was incredible world building. There was just really rich and engaging dialogue, like Planescape Torment level dialogue, combined with a replayability that is incredible. And there's just so many different endings. It is literally the only game I've ever played where you can talk the end villain out of being evil and kill himself. Kurgan. Wow. And it was just great. And one of my life goals is, after I'm done with Legends of Valor and all these other things, I would love to remake Arcanum, do an enhanced edition for it, and then make a sequel. Troika was actually going to make a sequel, Journey to the Center of Arcanum, but they ran out of money. So that would be great. But I think it's the greatest game ever made, for at least for me. And there's so much more that could have been done with it, but they were limited by budget and the technology of the time. But by no means was it a bad game. And it was actually just wow, 20 plus years later, and it's still just as good today as it was back then. That's a rare thing. Troika did a great Vampire Bloodlines game too. Yeah, they did. They were a great studio for their time. How do I get my wife to stop being mean to me? Read Gottman's Relationship Cure and talk to her about it. Who's the smartest person in crypto you know? Probably Silvio Macaulay. He's certainly the most impactful in terms of the crypto he's done. Dan Bonet is also, rolling intelligence, very solid. My wife left me before the bull run. Lucky me. You know, they say that crypto can be life-changing. Lately, crypto is wife-changing. That's another joke that's been floating around Twitter. What area in science are you most efficient? Probably astronomy. But I am going to go to space in 2025, and I'll learn a huge amount by then. Then it'll be geology. Who's your favorite physicist? Richard Feynman. Tim Berners-Lee is working on a new internet. Any thoughts? We invited Tim Berners-Lee to come to the Shelley Summit. Vince Cerf showed up, but Tim didn't, and I'm kind of sad about that. One of these days I'll talk to him about it, but every time we send him an email, he never replies back. Come on, Tim, work with us. I like you. Do you have a solar roof? No. I live on 50 acres, which means I have proper solar. I've installed 250 kilowatts of solar capacity. You're going for a meal, alive or dead. Who's sitting at the table? Choose 4. I will answer that question next time when I have a chance to think about it. You ever walk all 50 acres? Guys, it's 50 acres, not 5,000. Of course. Do it in about an hour or less. You should make a more balanced League of Legends. Zerath forever. How about Kassadin? Guys like Kassadin? Nothing is more depressing in life than mitting against a Kassadin with this 12-year-old Korean kid who plays 900 hours a week, and just watching him kill you over and over and over and over and over again, and then shit post in Korean, and you're just like, It brings sadness to your soul at levels that are indescribable. How does your company make money? Like all software companies, people pay us for services and they pay us for products. And kind of that simple, not super complicated. Charles, what's with the Mark Stopka or whatever guy hating you on Twitter? I guess I was mean to him at some point. I hurt his ego, and now he hates me and says things from time to time. And he has variability. Some days he threatens to sue us or at least sick lawyers on us, and other days he asks for money from Catalyst. The reality is Cardano is a big ecosystem, and there's going to be plenty of people in it who think I'm a horrible human being or incompetent or incapable, or they can do a far better job. You have to admit these people if you're serious about being decentralized and serious about it being an open ecosystem. So Mark has as much right to be here as I do or anyone else. And his success or failure will be completely connected to his ability to navigate the social dynamics of the system. So there's a difference between the right to be someplace and the right for that place to respect, fund, and collaborate with you. Okay, one is earned through interactions. The other one is given through the nature of the system. So Mark's always here. Some days he's here, some days he's not here. And he's free to do whatever he wants. And I really wish him well. And I hope that he finds a way to build a clique of people that he can work with effectively and innovate and do interesting things. Because any day that he does interesting things with the Cardano stack, what that actually means is Cardano is stronger. And the fact that we don't see eye to eye, there's no relationship there, means that that's totally independent of the things that I do, as it should be. And we'll see much more of that in the future. As Cardano grows in 5 or 10 years, it's entirely possible that many who are currently in the top 10 with competing projects will start building things in Cardano and continue to heavily criticize me, despite the fact that they're deploying infrastructure in Cardano, as Gavin Wood is doing in Ethereum, despite the fact that he has grievances with Vitalik. And that's how it should be. I mean, it's open ecosystem. Everybody has equal right to it. How many people do you employ at your company? I think we're up to around 300, give or take. I stopped counting a little while ago. Charles, do you ever feel like a plastic bag floating in the wind, wanting to start again? God damn, man, that's an American Beauty reference. Is Kevin Spacey going to murder me? How do you deal with and prevent burning out? Very important question. It's a combination of meditation, isolation tanks, exercise, and making sure to have a good, cheery demeanor. Smile. Who's the hottest woman in the world? That's a very subjective one. I would say Gal Gadot. Charles Hoskinson, do you meditate every day? Yes, sir, I do. Easiest way of getting started is download the Calm app. Tell you something profound. The higher, the lower. Actually, a good Zen koan is the slow way is the fast way. It's one of the truest things I've ever seen, ever heard. The what at the calm, calm, like calm, relaxed, calm, CALM. Who is the hottest man in the world? Ooh, that one's tough. That is tough. Michael Fassbender, I like that guy. Did I get my hyperbaric chamber up and running yet? No. It's going in the other house, not this one. Margot Robbie is greater than Gal Gadot. Well, yeah, after watching The Wolf of Wall Street, right? I'm a little biased, though. I had an ex-girlfriend of mine was Israeli, and she looked just like her. What watch are you wearing? This is a Samsung Galaxy watch. It's nothing special. Got it for like $100. Who is a smarter programmer, you or Andre? Andre. Charles, tell us another joke like the chicken one. Okay, I'll tell you guys another joke. So in the Soviet Union, it takes a really long time to get a car. So, America, you go out and buy a car. Soviet Union, you have to kind of be assigned, and you have to save for a long time and so forth. So anyway, this one guy, he wheels and deals and does everything he needs to do. He knows the neighborhood butcher and takes care of him, who takes care of him, and like all that stuff. So he spends 10 years getting ready to finally be able to go and get his government issued car. So he fills out all the paperwork, and of course it's Soviet Union, so like hundreds of pages of paperwork, lots of bureaucracy. He waits the requisite 6 months to have a meeting with the guy who issues them. And he sits down with them, and they go through all the paperwork together. He says, okay, all your paperwork is here. Everything is in order. We'll go ahead and create your car and ship it to you in 10 years. And he said, oh, okay, is that going to be Tuesday? And he said, let me take a look at the calendar. Yeah, I guess so. And he says, well, is it going to be in the morning or at night? He says, it's 10 years from now. Why the hell do you care? And he said, well, that particular day, the plumber is coming in the morning, and I just want to make sure I don't miss him. So it's morning or night. It's an old Soviet joke. Reagan told that one too. I stole a lot of jokes from Reagan. Do you have any other Waterhouse paintings? No, that's the only Waterhouse. Although I'm going to get after the cadaverous and odd, I'm going to get one representing that. That joke kills in Russia. Yeah, I imagine that joke was probably a lot funnier in Russian. I am a Tibetan. Love the Tibetan mask behind you. Thank you. Finally, somebody recognizes where they're from. I have been to Tibet. What do you think of Bob Lazar? Do you believe him about the UFOs? I mean, he seems to really believe what he's saying. Whether it's true or not, who knows? But he's convinced himself. How do you define love? Love is the desire to be around a person every single day and have them be part of your life and have them be part of your existence. Sometimes a big part, sometimes a small part, but just be part. And when they're not there, you miss them. Where's the new house located? Somewhere over the rainbow. It's a gay bar next to 90th and Federal. If I ever opened up a gay bar, that would be the name of it. Have a big unicorn Ethereum logo on it. I kid. People take things too seriously in life, you have to relax. You have to enjoy things. And humor is the best way for people to relate and understand each other. Actually, let's do something cool. Let's see if we can pull this off. Yeah, let me clear the canvas. Okay, guys, we're going to do something a little crazy. We are going to go to screen sharing. Okay. We're going to go for the whole screen. And somebody asked, do I like Vedic math? And I'm going to show you guys something really cool. All right, if everybody can see my screen, let's say you want to multiply 23 by 13. Okay, so we're going to show you guys a nifty little trick, and this is kind of like what Vedic math does. So you start with the 2, and you draw 2 lines like this. Then you do the 3, you draw 3 lines like this, and do the 1, you draw a line like that, and the 3, you draw a line like that. Okay, and then you count your points of intersection. So there's 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And you count everything in the middle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So your answer is 299. That's Vedic math. How about that? You know what this means? It means every kilt in Scotland has a numerical value. How about that? It actually is a way of counting the base 10 representation. So you can decompose a number into its bases. So the far left is counting the coefficient on the 100th place. The middle is counting on the 10th, and the end is counting on the 0th. Damn, being Asian, I actually knew this. Yes, the Indians came up with it, and then they gave it to China. And then China was a big empire, so they gave it to the rest of the world, the rest of Asia, Korea, Japan, and so forth. I'll show you guys some math from time to time, cool little math tricks. No, but I'm planning on getting a mantis shrimp and teaching the mantis shrimp how to do it. Okay. And we're just about come to the end, but I'm going to show you guys something really, really, really cool. Okay. Let's see here. This comes from Albert. Let me open up my messages to him. Albert. There we go. Ah, yes. And Albert is a very, very special friend, Albert von Galen. He's a Dutch painter. I just wanted to make sure I got his name right. And he sent this to me. I finally had a chance to open it up. And so Albert painted something of me. It took him several weeks to do it. And this is pretty crazy. How about that? You know, I get gifts from people all over the world, and this is perhaps one of the most meaningful because it took him so incredibly long to do it. It's an oil painting, and he meticulously tried to capture as much of the raw sexiness of Charles Hoskinson as he could. And then he had the desire to mail it to me. And so he said, hey, you pick your own price for it. I painted it and send whatever you like to me. So as many of you know, I am going to set up a stake pool. I've been a little delayed because I've been so busy with all the Shelley related stuff, but we're through that. So the Charles stake pool, I'm going to take the first 3 months of revenue that I make, and I'm splitting some of it with somebody at IOHK who's doing it with me. So my share of it, I'll give that to you, Albert. I don't know how much it's going to be, and I don't know how much that ADA is going to be worth, but it's yours. So just send me an address over Twitter through a private message. You know where to find me. And when the pool is set up, I'll send it to you for 3 months. But thank you so much for doing that. I got to get it framed, and I have to put it somewhere. And the problem is it's like fan art, But if I put it somewhere, people will think I'm really arrogant and narcissistic and so forth. And, that kind of floats around. So I'm trying to figure out how to deal with that, reconcile that. I'm not a big self-portrait fan, but it's incredibly well done. Great attention to detail. And Albert, thank you for the support. Thank you for the gift. I get so many gifts from people all around the world, literally all around the world. I've gotten bird feathers from Papua New Guinea. I've gotten a piece of rock it's a volcanic glass from Antarctica, from a researcher there. It's really incredible to see what people send. But the most meaningful ones are the ones that people put a lot of effort and skill into. And you can tell it comes from a place of love and care. And I think that's a great way to end the AMA. You're all part of a family here in the Cardano community. We all work together. We all have common hopes and dreams, and we're all in this together. And it's a source of unending strength. There are so many hard days, and there's so much criticism. And when I see, something like that, it just changes everything. It makes everybody so happy. So, Albert, thank you so much for it. Let's hope that the stake pool does a lot for you. And thanks for being part of a great family. All right, everybody. This was a fun one. I really enjoyed it. You have a wonderful night, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Cheers.